Chinese authorities take unprecedented measures as infection rates rise, and leaked information shows the CCP is likely underreporting virus cases. Experts from the World Health Organization are set to arrive in China this Thursday to probe the origins of the virus. It marks 1 year since the CCP virus was detected in Wuhan. Questions rise over the future of US-China relations and how they might change under a Biden administration. And an American e-commerce giant is forced to pay $10 million in compensation. That's after it reportedly violated China's copyright law. And the U.S. takes a major step in the US-Taiwan relationship. That's after years of walking on eggshells so as not to offend mainland China. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Authorities in China's highest-risk city claim virus cases in the double digits have been newly diagnosed, but leaked documents suggest the real number might be much higher. Authorities in Hebei province say 82 new cases were confirmed on January 10th. But NTD obtained a so-called emergency notice issued to a health bureau in the Gaochun district, a sub-prefecture city inside Hebei. The notice requires civil servants to transform more than 400 rooms inside 3 local schools into quarantine rooms by January 7th. Each room has several beds. That means more than 1,000 beds have to be sanitized each day. One local resident says he believes the regime is still underreporting cases. That district currently represents China's highest risk region for infection. Chinese authorities are taking unprecedented emergency measures as the pandemic takes its toll on Hebei province. NTD's Becky Zhou has the story.
The Chinese regime is labeling 90 areas across China as having a medium risk of virus infection as of Monday. Hebei province accounts for more than half of them, including the country's highest risk area, the Gaochun district in Shijiazhuang City. Local officials have ordered all residents there to stay at home. Locals captured a video of a security guard threatening them.
You might want to be drunk, but never hang out for group gatherings. You might want to put yourself into deep sleep, but do not take risks. Shut up and stay put. We'll crush your teeth and legs if you do otherwise.
Local officials are even forcing residents to get tested. Police officers have been seen entering homes and forcing residents' mouths open in order to take biological samples. Worse still, food supplies remain low due to extended lockdown measures. Residents say food prices are several times higher than normal, despite authorities' claims that food prices are stable.
Security guards prevent people from entering the village, including those who look after live pigs and transport all kinds of goods. The pandemic must be very severe. The price of green onions has reached an all-time high. Half a kilogram of green onions may cost 4 or 5 yuan.
Locals say 2 pounds of leeks, 2 pounds of cucumbers, and 2 small bags of pasta cost about $16 US. Xinji village inside Hebei province is a 3-hour drive from Beijing.
And an update on the World Health Organization's trip to China to investigate the origins of the CCP virus. It was delayed. Then on Monday, the Chinese regime said WHO experts are set to arrive in China this Thursday. It's not clear, however, whether the experts will travel to the city of Wuhan. That's where the CCP virus was first detected a year ago. Many countries have been requesting to send international investigation teams to China for months. In the beginning, China strongly rejected such requests. Recently, China approved the WHO's request for investigation. But the WHO's Director General complained last week that there have been delays. The Chinese Communist Party is strictly monitoring scientific research findings on the virus's origins in China. All findings must be approved by authorities before publication. Now we turn to Chinese vaccines. On Monday, the Southeast Asian country of Indonesia approved a Chinese CCP virus vaccine for emergency use. It is the first approval granted to any Chinese-made vaccine outside of China. The world's 4th most populous country will use CoronaVac to launch its nationwide vaccination program. Indonesia's Food and Drugs Authority said interim data from a late-stage trial of CoronaVac shows it is 65% effective. It is lower than figures in Brazil and Turkey, but higher than the World Health Organization's requirement of 50% minimum efficacy. Now we turn to reports of two major fires in China over the course of just 3 days. One fire broke out inside a grocery market in a suburban district of Beijing over the weekend. The blaze covered an area of over 1,000 square feet. Among the materials that caught on fire were plastic tarps and cotton quilts covering the vegetables. The fire broke out around 4 p.m. on Saturday. According to the Beijing Fire Department, no one was injured or killed, but we cannot verify those figures independently. The fire sparked just 3 days after another one last Thursday. In the early evening, another fire broke out in a battery factory in south-central China's Hunan province. After an explosion, the fire killed 1 and injured 20 people, if the official figures are accurate. The factory is owned by China's largest manufacturer of lithium batteries. The facility also recycles and processes high-end battery materials. Now we take a look at some economic figures. Major Chinese real estate firms saw a $120 billion reduction in values last year. According to a report by China National Business Daily, the total market value of 50 Chinese-listed real estate companies is valued at about $450 billion in 2020. It was around $570 billion in the same period in 2019. That is a $120 billion reduction, or more than 20%. More than 90% of the companies saw their assets shrink. 3/4 of the companies also saw their stock prices fall. A Chinese securities analyst told the paper the real estate sector has suffered a great deal from the pandemic last year. The Chinese regime also introduced policies to restrict finance. Biden has been officially certified by Congress as president-elect. But what exactly is his policy on China? We take a closer look at his comments on the US-China relationship. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
Beijing says it's looking forward to a new U.S. administration. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently said President-elect Joe Biden represents a new window of hope for the U.S.-China relationship. Last week, the U.S. Congress formally certified electoral college votes, declaring Joe Biden the winner. Wang urged the incoming Biden administration to return the U.S. to a, quote, sensible approach.
We hope that the next U.S. administration will return to a sensible approach, resume dialogue with China, and restart cooperation.
He continued to say the U.S. should learn from past lessons and work with China, moving forward in the direction China wants. In the last 4 years, the Trump administration has adopted a tough stance towards the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. That's on issues including unfair trade practices, foreign espionage, and malign domestic infiltration, as well as security threats posed by Chinese technology, in particular from telecom giant Huawei. The administration also confronted the CCP's human rights abuses against religious minorities and its suppression of Hong Kong through Beijing's national security law. It's unclear how a Biden administration will tackle U.S.-China relationships. Biden has expressed a friendly attitude towards China, but he has also condemned Beijing on other occasions. As per the New York Times, Beijing and his advisors view a number of Trump administration tactics, like the trade sanctions on China, as clumsy and unstrategic. In an interview with CNN last year, Biden said he doesn't view China as, quote, an opponent, adding that he aims to work with the Chinese on some issues, including the pandemic. The executive vice president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Myron Brilliant, says Biden will depart from the tough stance that the current administration took on China, saying, quote, President Trump has adopted a tough stance on China. But from Biden, we expect a significant departure in tone, style, and process. On the other hand, Biden also strongly criticized the Chinese regime and its leader during his campaign. He called CCP head Xi Jinping a thug for detaining millions of people in labor camps. He also condemned Beijing's national security law, describing it as a death blow to the freedoms of the city. He likewise warned of more sanctions on China if Beijing tried to use the law to mistreat Americans. During Biden's campaign, allegations did emerge that he and his family received money from the CCP. Relevant emails surfaced suggesting Joe Biden and his son Hunter had secret business relationships with one Chinese company, reportedly with ties to the country's military. A former business associate of Hunter Biden, Tony Bobulinski, came forward on the record to say that the emails and allegations are authentic, calling the Bidens compromised by the CCP. Biden denies the allegations. In general, he expressed a critical tone towards China during his campaign, even claiming Trump was too weak on China and that he plans to take a tougher stance. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
Now we look to Huawei's new plan. The Chinese telecom equipment firm has not given up its future in Australia. It wants to be part of the country's 6G network. Back in 2018, Australia banned Huawei from participating in the country's 5G network. It cited security concerns as the reason. Jeremy Mitchell is the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer of Huawei Australia. He told the Sydney Morning Herald that he is confident Huawei could contribute to future rollouts. He adds that Huawei would like to work with the Australian government in 6G or 7G rollouts. This is because he believes either Huawei or another Chinese company will be the leader in this area. Right now, 6G networks are only at the very beginning of research development. Now we turn to Amazon. A Chinese court recently ruled that a Chinese subsidiary of Amazon infringed trademark. The court banned the e-commerce giant from using its AWS logo in China. AWS refers to the cloud computing service Amazon Web Services. A Chinese tech company, Beijing ActionSoft, sued Amazon in 2018 for their use of the logo. The court stated that Amazon's use of AWS was similar to ActionSoft's in terms of content, targeted clients, purpose of service, and sales channels. This could cause confusion among consumers. Amazon is required to pay more than $10 million in compensation to ActionSoft. An Amazon representative told Wall Street Journal that Amazon was the first to use the AWS logo in China. Amazon has appealed the case to China's Supreme Court. Amazon entered the Chinese market in 2004, but it has failed to gain traction among Chinese consumers. They tend to turn to domestic rivals. For decades, the U.S. has limited its diplomats and officials from interacting with their Taiwan counterparts, mainly to avoid provoking Communist China. But now that policy is coming to an end. NTD's Penny Zhou has more on the story.
The U.S. is lifting restrictions on officials making contacts with their Taiwan counterparts. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, in a statement, called the decades-long rules an attempt to appease the communist regime in Beijing. He announced that all such guidelines are now null and void. He said the U.S. and Taiwan share common values, and that the two's relations need not and should not be shackled by self-imposed restrictions of our permanent bureaucracy. The U.S. broke its diplomatic relations with Taiwan in the 1970s and started one with Beijing's communist regime. Taiwan welcomed the latest move by the U.S.
This is not a sudden whim. Over the past 3 years, the relationship between Taiwan and the U.S. has improved. In fact, many past taboos in Taiwan-U.S. interactions have been broken one after another.
Western media is largely focusing on how the move might enrage Communist China, which claims Taiwan as a red line issue. But some Taiwan lawmakers say not everything has to be about whether it angers China or not.
Any development in U.S.-Taiwan relations is irritating in the eyes of Beijing. If all of our foreign diplomatic relations are conducted on the premise of not irritating the CCP, then there is no need for Taiwan diplomacy to do anything. By overemphasizing the CCP's anger, we are playing into the CCP's hands.
Chinese state media blasted the action from the U.S., calling it the last-ditch madness of an administration abandoned by the Americans, and claiming it could bring Taiwan annihilation. A U.S. State Department spokesperson wrote on Twitter, alleging that the Chinese regime's nervous panic diplomacy is unwarranted and dangerous. The Trump administration during its term ramped up arms sales to Taiwan to protect the island from Beijing's aggression. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Taiwan says lifting these restrictions elevates the two nations' ties to a global partnership. The U.S. ambassador to the UN is set to meet Taiwan's president this week and discuss how to promote Taiwan's international participation. Taiwan launched a newly redesigned passport on Monday. It gives greater prominence to the island's name Taiwan, aiming to avoid confusion with China.
Taiwan is rolling out a newly redesigned passport on Monday, aiming to avoid confusion with China amid the COVID-19 pandemic and as Beijing steps up its efforts to assert sovereignty. The new passport gives greater prominence to the island's day-to-day name. Existing ones have Republic of China, its formal name written in large English font at the top, with Taiwan printed at the bottom. The new passport enlarges the word Taiwan in English and removes Republic of China, though that name remains in Chinese and in small English font around the national emblem. During the early stages of the global health crisis, Taiwan says some of its citizens were confused with Chinese nationals and on occasion were unfairly subject to the same entry bans when case numbers of the virus were well under control in Taiwan. Chen Li-ting is one of the first applicants for the new passport.
I thought it would happen sooner or later. That is, sooner or later the word Taiwan would appear more and more, and in the future, Republic of China will disappear.
China has said it does not matter what, quote, petty moves Taiwan made. It would not change the fact that Taiwan was an inseparable part of China. China claims democratic Taiwan as its sovereign territory and says only it has the right to speak for the island internationally.
Now to Hong Kong. The US, UK, Canada, and Australia are condemning last week's mass arrests in Hong Kong. Authorities reportedly targeted pro-democracy politicians and activists in the former British colony. 55 people were arrested, all under the premise of Beijing's national security law over Hong Kong. The Chinese regime argues the new law is needed to maintain order in the city. But the four Western countries say it's actually being used to crack down on opposing political views. They also say it violates the promises China made to uphold freedoms in Hong Kong, back when it took ownership of the city back from Britain over 20 years ago. Most of those arrested last week had taken part in an unofficial primary for a legislative election. The 55 have not been charged, and all but 3 have been released on bail. Convictions could disqualify them from running for office. The water level of a major southeastern Asian river recently plunged several feet. That's after Beijing adjusted one of China's dams. The shift affected over 60 million people. But the Chinese regime didn't notify the impacted countries until a week later.
China is reportedly holding back the flow of the Mekong River using a hydroelectric dam on the river's upper reaches. But it reportedly didn't inform its downstream neighbors of the change until a week later. On December 31st, authorities started using the dam to hold back water for what they called the maintenance of transmission lines in its electricity grid. But for countries downstream, the river's water level dropped by 3 feet without warning. The sudden shift could devastate local fish populations and affect river navigation. But China has made no attempt to notify the countries at the time of the change or in advance. 1 week later, January 5th, a new U.S.-backed monitoring system pointed out the water level shift on Facebook. The same day, China notified Thailand that its dam would reduce its water flow rate from about 2,000 cubic meters per second to 1,000 cubic meters per second from January 5th to the 24th, cutting downstream water flow by about half, 47%. The water level will drop by 4 feet throughout the process. China has been known to restrict water flow through dams from time to time for a number of years, often citing reasons like electricity production. These decisions are often made without notifying downstream countries. More than 60 million people depend on the Mekong River for fishing and farming. China agreed to share water data with Mekong River countries last October. A new Mekong dam monitoring system, partly funded by the U.S., also started operations last month, adding fuel to the U.S.-China confrontation in Southeast Asia. The monitor uses cloud-piercing satellites to track water levels in upstream dams in China. Beijing has so far rejected suggestions that its Mekong Dam harms those living downstream.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow. Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.